Okay, my friends, so today is Saturday, July 12th, 2025, and blessed are those, it is often said, who have faith despite not having seen with their own eyes. And in some ways, that's kind of the position that a lot of Bitfarms investors are in right now, right? Where you're kind of getting blessed for having had faith when the stock was at, 68 cents, 70 cents, maybe 75 cents, maybe 80 cents, maybe 90 cents, 95 cents, right? I don't know that with Bitcoin at around $117,000 a coin, with hash prices definitely showing some signs of life, I don't know that we necessarily go back down to those price points. At least certainly that's not my expectation. Never say never, right? There could always be a curveball out there that sends the market as a whole down and Bitfarms, goes down along with it. But I get the impression that this is the beginning of what we have been anticipating for quite some time. Not just me anticipating it, you've probably been anticipating it. I think a lot of us have been anticipating a meaningful, sustained move in the price of Bitcoin now in 2025. And I think we're beginning to see it. And the ramifications of this move in the price of Bitcoin, and not just for Bitfarms, but for the entire publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem, the ramifications are pretty profound. And we're starting to see that first and foremost, right in the price of shares of Bitfarms, as well as many of the other companies in the sector. What is not obvious yet is the impact this is going to have on revenue and on cash flow. It's easy to forget that Bitfarms has upwards of, depending how you want to do the math, 18, 19, maybe up to 20-ish or so exahash of Bitcoin mining capacity. This is not some little company that set up shop about 6 months ago. They've got about, a couple hundred Bitcoin mining machines kind of, doing their thing, right, in some warehouse, and the company's kind of floundering around. I mean, this is a very, very well-established company with operations in different countries. I think, upwards of 15 plus data centers. And I mean, even leaving aside for a moment some of the issues that have arisen in Argentina, this is a company that really genuinely has a sizable, meaningful Bitcoin mining operation. Okay, this isn't some little rinky-dink company that's kind of barely getting by, as it relates to Bitcoin mining. What I do think has happened, right, is that with all of this talk about, hey, our future direction in 2026 and beyond is going to really try to be more so, at least for those couple of years before we got to make a decision about whether or not to reinvest in Bitcoin mining equipment, right, ahead of the next cycle. People say, all right, well, so if the company's sort of like near-term future is Bitcoin, but then we're kind of forgetting about that because all of the talk is about HPC AI data centers. And then there's not a whole lot to see yet, keyword being yet, as it relates to HPC AI data centers. You kind of get stuck in this no man's land. Somebody posted on X a while back. I kind of forget who posted this, but wherever you are, I thought this was really spot on, where it's like, the company's kind of like in a bit of a no man's land, right? Where on the one hand, we're not really reaching out to people who are Bitcoin mining centric investors, right? And yet when we talk to HPC AI centric investors, there's not a whole lot to show them yet, right? That's why I've consistently said, and I'll say it again, I think TeraWulf is a nice analog that's just a couple of steps ahead of Bitfarms, right? In terms of, hey, congratulations, TeraWulf, right? Posting these really meaningful, photos of CB1, right? Which is, without getting into the weeds of TeraWulf at the moment, it's just, hey, it's one of their newer HPC AI-centric, data centers. Remember, TeraWulf actually has a customer, what I'd argue is like a top 1% in the world HPC AI, customer, right? In the form of Core42, right? A subsidiary of G42. Point being, hey, where Bitfarms is right now, it's kind of like, man, there's not a lot to see as it relates to HPC AI. There's not a whole lot of focus or emphasis on Bitcoin mining. Remember, the company elected to no longer provide Bitcoin mining production updates. So you're really left to kind of just close your eyes and have this blind faith, right? That behind the scenes, things are happening to slowly but surely move the HPC AI project forward. You have to close your eyes and have a little bit of blind faith that, okay, you know what? Yeah, there was and is a Bitcoin mining operation in here somewhere, right? That's not some small operation, but rather a fairly large, robust, and I think quite respectable operation with an incredible efficiency. You know what I mean? In terms of the joules per terahash, the overall fleet efficiency is quite good. So, you know, Bitfarms, and again, this isn't obvious yet, but when we look at the financial statements, this is a company who is very, very highly sensitive to changes in hash prices. And as we've seen hash prices improve, so too, I believe, we're going to see, ultimately Bitfarms' financial position improve dramatically. It's not in really bad shape now to begin with, actually, really. So this is it, guys. This is the moment where you really got to then ask yourself, is Bitfarms potentially one of the, if not the most undervalued Bitcoin mining company out there right now, with shares trading just, like above $1 a share, operations that largely look the same as they did, arguably actually better than they did in some ways 3 to 4 months ago, right? As more T21s kind of get fixed up, as the fleet as a whole becomes more robust and more efficient, right? As the final upgrades are made. I mean, this is a company that looks a whole lot better than it did, I would argue, in the fall. Because now we even have a clearer sense of what's going to happen as it relates to HPC AI. Now, I know we don't have anything concrete yet. And as some people have said, hey, and I do look at the comments briefly. I'm going to dive into all the comments in the days ahead, I promise. But somebody mentioned, I think rightfully so, hey, watch out, man. This Steven guy was really, really bullish on Stronghold Digital Mining. And it's true, I was. I also dollar cost averaged my way all the way down. I think it was like $3.05 a share. And I documented that all publicly on camera. It's not like some shenanigan where I'm saying it now. This is all on camera. And I had the faith to believe that, hey, you had assets there that were worth something. And ultimately, Bitfarms stepped up and made that a reality, right? So, yeah, I mean, it was a 77% return. Kind of crappy in the context of Bitcoin mining companies up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800%, 1,000%, right? But I think Bitfarms, at where it's at right now, from my perspective, going into this it looks like a really meaningful breakout in the price of Bitcoin. Don't want to jinx anything. I'm not a technician. I don't have a crystal ball that's telling me precisely where the price of Bitcoin is going to go. But I do suspect that if we continue to see the price of Bitcoin move up, and as we begin to see a real acceleration, right, towards Bitcoin at this moment in time, particularly if we get some really good indicators that some regulatory frameworks, at least here in the United States, are going to be super friendly to the crypto industry, specifically Bitcoin. I want to give Ben a lot of credit. Ben Gagnon, of course, CEO of Bitfarms, he has said over and over again, hey, our anticipation is that tail end of 2025 is when we're going to really see a meaningful bull run in the price of Bitcoin. And, hey, whether or not that's going to continue well into 2026, who knows? But Bitfarms is attempting to position itself so that, hey, there could be an alternative source of revenue that's a bit more sustainable and predictable, right, vis-a-vis HPC AI, data center income, as compared to just purely being Bitcoin-centric. I think we're at the beginning of something very special. I really do. Now, it's hard to convey that in a way that, I can give you proof of that. It still requires a little bit of that blind faith, right? Blind in the sense that, let me phrase it this way. It's almost like half blind, right? One eye is shut. Because on the one hand, it's pretty obvious what hash prices are doing. It's pretty obvious what the price of Bitcoin is doing. It's pretty obvious that Bitfarms has a meaningful Bitcoin mining operation. That's all as plain as day, right? What's not so obvious is the impact that that's going to have on their cash flow. It's kind of obvious if you dig into the numbers, but I mean, I'm just talking superficially here, right? If you're just looking at the stock price, kind of vaguely looking at what's going on in the market, hearing beeps from your smartphone interrupting your broadcast, you can start to put together, right, this picture that, you know what, hey, the Bitcoin mining side of the business is doing what it's supposed to do. The side that's maybe not so clear is the HPC AI side of things. Earlier this week, CoreWeave announced that they were going to be purchasing all of Core Scientific in an all-stock transaction valued, I believe, at about $9 billion. That, if my math is correct, values each megawatt of Core Scientific's energy capacity at about $7 million a megawatt. Can we apply a similar mathematical metric to Bitfarms? Possibly. I think we need to see a little bit more in terms of what the plan is for the HPC AI project at Panther Creek. I think we need to see things begin to materialize more, right? But the point is, this pivot towards HPC AI, it's not fairy dust. It's not a fantasy. There's real money in this market, lots and lots of money. Okay, and so we're all looking forward, right, to the next investor presentation that Bitfarms will be putting out in the not too distant future. And in the meantime, I really do think Bitfarms is incredibly undervalued. Why is this stock not at $2, $3, maybe $3.50 a share, maybe $4 a share, just on the strength of its Bitcoin mining operation alone? So that's something for you to consider and think about as you enjoy, hopefully, the remainder of your weekend. We will definitely be checking in together again soon, early next week. In the meantime, hey, if you like these broadcasts, if you like the fact that I'm attempting as best I can to push Bitfarms, right, and its story out into a wider audience, right, and to talk about this in depth, if you like these broadcasts and have not subscribed, please consider doing so. Consider liking this broadcast. It helps YouTube get the message out to even more people who may not necessarily have been introduced as of yet to Bitfarms. And if you are a subscriber, thank you. If you're somebody who's making some money on this trade, congratulations. If, however, you're somebody who's still underwater, have faith. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm asking you to please have some faith, because things are beginning to align in a way that I truly believe are going to ultimately see shares of Bitfarms vindicated. Okay, my friend, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again very soon.